So good afternoon, everybody. I'll save the introduction because I think most of you know who I am. So the morning session that you heard me speak, I focus on user-centric analytics and actionability. So in this session, I'm going to dive a bit more into the technical aspects of it. Specifically, I'm going to focus on audiences as a concept and actionability. And in actionability, I'm going to touch a little bit about AdWords integration, a bit about remarketing, and if time permits, a little bit about multi-channel funnels, but let's see. So just to give you a summary of what you heard from me in the morning was basically Google Analytics is going to work on a people-centric platform, and the three main pillars we're going to work on is the changes to the data model to support concepts like user metrics and user-level attributes. The second thing is the changes we did for the reporting and analysis for you to better understand the customer journey. And lastly, the insights and action, which is basically make the data actionable with audiences and also have intelligent insights through machine learning. So in this technical track or in this session, I'm going to focus on the third pillar, which is insights and actions. So I'm going to focus on how do you create an audience, and once you create an audience, how do you act upon that audience, basically. So this is what you basically saw in the audiences report that I showed, basically saying that you can create a new dimension based on whatever conditions that you have. And once you create a dimension, I said you'll be able to see some reports. But then what you can also do after you create this audience is link your GA account with your AdWords account and then say that you want to remarket to this group of users, and then you can pick whatever ad group or ad you want so that you can re-engage with the users. So I'll give two concrete use cases or two concrete examples of how you can do it. So we are calling this concept as state-based audiences. I'll explain in a minute why it's called state-based audiences, but to define a state-based audience, you have to understand three main criteria. So this is something. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. So to create a state-based audiences, which I just want to let you know that this is something that's only available to whitelisted customers today, but over the next 3 or 4 months, this will be available for everybody. So just after I explain this, if you log into GA and you don't see it, don't get too worried because this is coming up soon. So what I'm going to explain right now is how do you create an audience based on user-level attribute, and then how do you take action on it. So the three main things you need to understand is first is there's something called as include and exclude conditions. So what include does is basically if the criteria or condition is met, you add that particular user to the audience. And then there is an exclude condition, which basically says if that criteria is met, you remove that particular user from your audience. And then the second thing you need to understand is we have a concept called as permanent or temporary removal of users. So what it basically does at a high level, it figures out if the remove condition from the earlier thing is met, do you want to permanently remove that user forever, or do you want to remove that user until the next include condition is met? So I know that all of this might sound a little vague to you, but please bear with me. In the next slide, I'm actually going to go into a concrete example explaining what this temporary removal means. But at a high level, you can decide whether the user will ever come back into an audience or user will never come back into an audience once they are removed. And lastly, we have a concept called as membership duration, which determines how long do you want to keep the user in an audience. Like for whatever reason, you might say that I want this user, once a user criteria is met, and you put that user in an audience, you might want to keep that user in that audience forever. Basically, you'll say that someone is a high-valued customer to me because they've spent $100, and they'll always be a high-valued customer, so you can keep them forever. Or sometimes you might say, these are people who have abandoned my cart, and realistically speaking, if somebody abandoned something in your cart and you're re-engaging with the user, they might come and complete the purchase maybe within the next few days or maybe max 1 month. Nobody is going to come back to a shopping cart that's incomplete after 3 months or 6 months to complete a purchase. So this membership duration kind of gives you the flexibility to decide how long you want to keep that user in the audience. So once you know these 3 main criteria, you can then go and start creating the state-based audiences. So let's take a concrete example. Let's say that as a business, you want to create an audience that's cart abandoners. You know that this is a critical user group because, for example, what happened is these users came, they added something to your cart, but they did not finish a purchase. And these are the kind of group of users you want to re-engage, because if you remember the remarketing funnel that I showed, this is the last 2% of the users who drop off, but they are 17x more likely to convert if you re-engage. So for example, you will create an audience group by saying include condition, which is like a session scope. I'll show a small demo of this, but just bear with me until then. Include condition is session scope where add to cart is greater than 0, which basically says include this user in an audience if they added something to a cart, and exclude this user when the session scope is transactions greater than 0. So include someone when they add something to a cart. The moment they do a purchase, you remove them from this particular audience. That's as simple as that. And then you have to make a choice whether you want to do a permanent or temporary removal of users. In this particular case, you might want to pick temporary removal or not permanent removal. The reason why you don't want to do permanent removal is someone basically added something to a cart, you add to an audience, they complete a purchase, you remove them from the audience, you want to add them back into the audience when they add something to a product, add something to a cart, but don't purchase again. So there is a chance for them to come back into the audience. So you might want to pick temporary removal. And finally, membership duration. As I said, it's dependent on your use case. You can pick anywhere from 1 day to 540 days. 540 is our limit in terms of like how long you can go for membership duration. For this particular example, as I said, cart abandoners have a recency behavior. Nobody's going to come back after 6 months to complete a purchase. So let's say you create an example and say 30 days. So for the cart abandoners audience, the user flow with temporary removal and 30-day membership might look like this. So on day 1, the session 1, you add something to a cart. You basically add that user to a cart abandoner audience immediately because the include criteria is met. Day 10, second session, there was no checkout activity. There is no change in the include condition, no change in the exclude condition. This person remains as a cart abandoner. Same thing for day 15, no change in include or exclude, keep them in the cart abandoner audience. On day 20, they went and completed the purchase for whatever be the reason. So you then remove this user from the cart abandoners audience because they're not cart abandoners anymore. And then they basically, on day 22, session 5, they add something to a cart. They also make a purchase in the same session. So there is no change to the cart abandoner audience because what happens is in the first hit, we add them as a cart abandoner. By the second or the third hit, we remove them. So it's as good as nothing really happened. And then on day 25, they add something to a cart. They're back into the cart abandoner audience. This is what I said. Day 1, they're part of the audience. Day 20, they're not in the audience. But then there is a chance for them on day 25th to come back because we picked temporary removal. And then there's no checkout activity, so they stay as cart abandoners. And then on day 56, you notice that there is any kind of activity, they're removed from the cart abandoners. So it's not like they met the exclude criteria, but the day 25 you added, and the membership duration was 30 days. So you're past the 30-day membership. So you're saying that it's a way for you to say that, after 30 days, I don't care about this cart abandoners. I don't want to re-engage with this user. It's as good as you kind of given up on this user. So you kind of remove from the cart abandoners audience. So this is one use case. And just remember the use cases, the green boxes are the entry points, and the red ones are the exit points for you into the audience. Once you've created an audience like this, you'll be able to go into the report and start looking at how many users are in the audience, how many users are out of the audience. But the most important thing is, once you've created an audience like this, you might want to act upon it. Basically, you might want to go to AdWords and create a campaign. So I'll show a small demo of that. But before I get into the demo, I want to show another example of never purchased. The earlier example was cart abandoners. This one is, you want to create an audience saying, I want to figure out how many users have never purchased anything. So it's almost the same, include and exclude condition. In fact, it's exactly the same, include and exclude condition. Add something to a cart, include them. They make a transaction, you exclude them. And then the biggest difference here is in permanent or temporary removal, you'll have to pick permanent removal, because once somebody has purchased, that's it. They're never going to come back to the never purchased, because it's a lifetime attribute. And then the membership duration, of course, we can pick anywhere from 1 to 540 days. Let's say I pick 540 days in this case. So the user flow for permanent removal and 540-day membership, I'm going to go with this really quickly because it's exactly the same as what you saw last time. Like you have first session, you added to never purchased because they added to a cart. No change on day 10, no change on day 15, so they remain in the never purchased category. Day 20, they complete the purchase, so they are no more never purchases because they have purchased something, so you remove them. And then you add something to a cart and you purchase, it's as good as nothing has changed, they're still removed. But the interesting part over here is they add something back into a cart, but just because the include criteria is met, it doesn't mean that they'll come back into the audience because you said permanent removal. The moment somebody is removed, they're never going to come back, which in this use case makes complete sense because somebody is, you can never put somebody into never purchase after they made a purchase. So that's basically the only difference between the permanent removal and the temporary removal. So with that, I'll get into a small demo of how are you going to create this state-based audience. So I'm going to select one of my demo accounts. So don't get too attached to the data because most of the data might look fake because it's a demo account. So what you'll have to do is go to the admin section. Under the property settings, go to audience definitions, pick audience. There's going to be a bunch of audiences already created. I'm going to say I'll go to create a new audience. The first thing you might have to do is, this is your profile, but then you have to link this profile to a destination account, which is your AdWords account. So I'm going to say, I'm going to pick an AdWords account. And then I'm going to say next step is to define an audience. There are multiple ways for you to define an audience. You can pick the predetermined audiences over here, like smart list, all users, new users, or returning users. But in this case, I want to show you the cart abandoners use case. So I'm going to say create a new audience. And then I can pick any of the GA inbuilt dimensions. But I'm going to go into slightly advanced, by going to the conditions section. And then I'm going to say, this is session scope, include criteria, and then I'm going to say add to cart per session is greater than 0. Then you add them to this cart abandoners audience, and then you exclude the criteria when the transactions metric per session is greater than 0. This is exactly what I showed you in the slide. Just have an include and exclude condition, and then you apply this condition. What you will see is over time, this section should populate with how many users belong to this. Yeah, it shows up as 833 users belong to this criteria, which basically means there are 833 users who have cart abandoners as of today. And the membership duration, as I said, you can change anywhere from 1 to 540, but let's stick to 30 days. And the most important thing is, since it's cart abandoners, I don't want permanent removal. So I'm going to uncheck this. And so it's as good as temporary removal. And then I'm going to name this audience by saying cart abandoners with a 30-day look back. And then I'm going to save this. Hopefully it works. Yeah, actually it doesn't take this long. Okay, yeah. So the most important thing is you've defined an audience. Now you can go into this reporting section and in like a 24-hour period, you should start seeing data accumulated in terms of how many users are cart abandoners and stuff like that. But my focus in this talk is going to be how do you stitch the measurement with actionability. So for that reason, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how do you create a campaign for this particular audience. Let's imagine these are cart abandoners. You want to re-engage with your cart abandoners. So you automatically see this link that says create a campaign. And the reason why it automatically shows is because I already linked an AdWords account. If I hadn't linked an AdWords account, this wouldn't show because you have to do that first. So you can, if you haven't done this linking, you can come back later and link and then start creating an AdWords campaign. But for this case, let's say I want to create a campaign. So it automatically goes to the AdWords. That's one of the nice things about Google Analytics and AdWords is we make things seamless. Like from GA, once you want to take an action, it automatically takes you to AdWords. From AdWords, you can come back to GA and stuff like that. So, like if I want to talk about all the capabilities of AdWords, I can talk about it for like days. But since there's limited time, I'm just going to go over the very key things for you to create a campaign, create an ad group, and create a specific ad. So in this case, I'm going to say the type is display network only. You can pick display network or you can pick search network, up to you. And then I'm going to say location is, I'm going to say I want to focus on United States. So I pick that. English as a language. And then there is a bid strategy. So the bid strategy it's a complex topic by itself. But I just want to give you a summary that you can figure out target CPA, target ROAS. What this basically does is AdWords gives you more conversions for your cost if you pick target CPA, and this is more conversion value for your cost. So the different bid strategies that AdWords uses. For simplicity's sake, let's just stick to manual CPC, and then let's set a budget of $1 per day. Just for example's sake, you can choose whatever is applicable for your business. You can check additional settings, like for example, there is a concept of dynamic ads. If you don't know what dynamic ads is, if you're in retail business, you can have a Google Merchant Center account and link the Google Merchant Center feed with Google Analytics so that instead of just showing a static ad, you will show an ad with the exact product that they saw. So AdWords basically dynamically changes the ads dependent on the users and personalizes it. But for simplicity's sake, let's not get into those. And let's say I'm saying that this campaign is cart abandoners with a 30-day membership duration, and then you save. So this creates a campaign. The next thing you have to do after you create a campaign is create an ad group. You can create multiple ad groups. For simplicity's sake, let's just say cart abandoners ad group 1. Enhanced CPC bid, let's just say it's 14 cents. And the landing page is your I hope this is the website. This is, oh, sorry. Yeah, so this is shop.googlemerchandisestore.com is the site. So I'm going to set that as a landing page URL. And if you notice over here, the interests and remarketing, if you edit, it automatically has picked the audience that you created. This is the audience that you created on the GA side as cart abandoners with 30 days. So it automatically gets picked because you deep linked by creating an audience, creating a campaign from the audience. And then you can pick whatever targeting optimization. I'll just go with conservative. You can go with aggressive if you want to. If you want AdWords to automatically figure out new users who meet the criteria, and then you save and continue. And the next step is after you create a campaign, after you create an ad group, is how do you create the actual ad that the users are going to see. So you first have to pick an image. So in this case, I'm going to pick this image. If you notice, this image is automatically picked. I didn't upload anything. What AdWords does is it goes through the landing page, figures out what images are useful. And then you basically have to pick a short headline, which is saying visit us again. and then I'm going to say 20% off for loyal customers. So it's basically a way for you to say, okay, these are cart abandoners, which assuming you also figure out that these are loyal customers based on the lifetime value, which I didn't show, but you can add one more condition if you want. So this is an ad that shows for the user. And then basically you want to actually have a coupon that says, okay, 20% off or whatever. And then you say, okay, I'm done. So the business name is Google Online Store. And then you're done. So you save the ads. That's it. You've created, so what you've done is you've created an audience, and then you've deep linked to AdWords, and you've created a campaign with a bid. So when a criteria is met, AdWords will start showing these ads. So people who have abandoned their cart and forgot about your business will now see an ad that says, please visit us again. I'm giving you 20% off. Just come back and complete the purchase. So this way you kind of re-engage the 96% of the users who are never going to come back to your site. It's as simple as that. So this is one demo where I wanted to show you how do you create an audience and how do you basically link that with AdWords. In the interest of time, I'll move on because you can do a lot more after this, as in like go back to the AdWords report and figure out how is it performing, how do you fine tune and stuff like that, but I'm not getting into those details. Like after this, I want to go a bit into AdWords and Google Analytics integration. Sometimes people look at Google Analytics as a separate product, AdWords as a separate product, but it's important for you to figure out that both of them work well together always. In the AdWords, you kind of get idea of cost and performance, how your ads is performing, how many clicks are you getting and stuff like that. But it becomes all the more powerful if you take these data that you have on the Google Analytics, which is goals, e-commerce, remarketing lists, or engagement metrics, which AdWords does not have. Like AdWords does not know how much time someone spent in your site, or are they interested in a specific product, what kind of an engagement session looks like it. And those are data that Google Analytics will provide. So Google Analytics data flowing into AdWords will make you tailor your message and ads for your customers all the more better and all the more targeted. So it's basically, it says GA knows what happens after a user has clicked your ad. So it's important to merge both the worlds together to have a good experience. So in the subsequent slides, I'll go into each important things you need to know when you work with Google Analytics and AdWords is, first, it's good for you to import goals, goal completions, and e-commerce transactions. Like for example, you have the Google Analytics goals and transactions, and you have AdWords doing its own conversion tracking, but it's all the more powerful if you import the goals and e-commerce transactions from Google Analytics into AdWords. The reason why it's all the more important is when you say AdWords that automatically optimize my conversion, you want AdWords to automatically optimize based on what is important for your site. Sometimes for your site, it's always not e-commerce transactions that will be critical. Sometimes it might be some kind of a goal that says, did people subscribe for something? Did people subscribe for the loyalty membership and stuff like that? And that kind of information is not available on AdWords, so it's actually important to merge both worlds and import your goals and transactions into AdWords. I will show a small demo of each of this feature that I'm talking about after this. The next thing you need to understand is this concept of smart list. I don't know how many of you use it in GA. It's a pretty cool thing. We use machine learning to figure out what kind of group of users will be more valuable if you start re-engaging or connecting with them. Like, as I said, there are two ways of looking at insights. There's always this manual insights you can figure out by looking at data yourself. But you need to understand that there are 250 odd dimensions and metrics. So if you look at the combinations, it's exponential. So sometimes it's better to let machine figure out things for you. So in this case, you're letting machine figure out that these group of users have a tendency to convert. So let me just create an audience automatically from a smart list and then link them to AdWords so that I can re-engage with these customers. And then basically, this is a key thing which I don't know how many of you know about it, but in AdWords, when you look at campaign, ad group, keyword stats, you would be able to go and add additional columns, which is Google Analytics specific columns, and you can ask for bounce rate, pages per session, average session duration, and percentage new sessions. So what it basically does is, even without coming into Google Analytics, in AdWords, when you're looking at the performance of your ads, you can look at engagement stats right there, basically. So for example, over here, if you look at just the CTR and pages per session, both look almost similar, row 1 and row 2. But then what is interesting is the moment you add average session duration, you can see a big difference of 133 seconds and 30 seconds. So it automatically lets you know that one particular campaign is actually driving more engaged users to your site when compared to the other. So you might want to see what is the landing page, what is different from these two campaigns to figure out why it's driving more engaged customers. And you'll get this only when you kind of import Google Analytics columns into the AdWords. And then there is also another metric called percentage new sessions, which you can add in AdWords directly. This is a GA metric shown in the AdWords. What it basically lets you know that not all campaigns are the same. Some campaigns perform much better in acquiring new users rather than returning users. So for you, it might be a critical metric to figure out that, okay, this campaign is doing really well in terms of getting new customers into my business. And then another key thing which if folks are not doing it, I think I'll strongly encourage them to use is auto tag your ads. So if you go to the AdWords setting in preferences, you can go and say destination URL is auto tagged. What it really means is it reduces the chances of you shooting yourself in your foot by manually tagging something. That's number one. And number two, it gives you much richer reporting on the Google Analytics side. So what it basically does is, when you say auto tagging is enabled and you click on an ad, Google Analytics gets the click ID, the Google click ID, and once we have the Google click ID, we can show you a lot more richer set of dimensions. We can show you match type, we can show you query type, we can show all kind of destination URL fragments that wouldn't be available if you don't use auto tagging. But I don't know that there are some corner cases where people can't do auto tagging. In that case, it's okay for you to do manual tagging. But given a choice, I would always prefer for you to do auto tagging wherever possible. And then the other thing is segment your behavior to understand your audience. This goes back to my earlier talk that not all users are the same. So whenever you see some report on the AdWords site in GA, it's important for you to apply a segmentation to figure out how is this particular segment performing when compared to other segment. For example, you can figure out how are the new customers performing compared to the returning customers, or how are customers from New York performing compared to California or compared to South America. And it goes the other way. I mean, it goes two ways. Like basically, you can add a GA-specific secondary dimension to add words keys. At the same time, you can go and the AdWords report and add GA-specific dimensions, and you can go to GA-specific report and add AdWords dimensions wherever applicable. Just layer one over the other. Yeah, this is one example where you say, you're looking at the country, broken down dependent on different stats, metrics, but the moment you add ad slot right there, which is basically AdWords specific dimension, it gives you additional insights. For example, in this case, it says the right-hand side or right-hand slot ad in UK is performing much better in terms of pages per session when compared to other countries. So don't look at the AdWords specific reports by itself and GA specific reports by itself. Try to mix and match and see what additional insights you can get. And another cool thing is, I don't know how many of you use tree maps, but this is one of the cool visualization that we have in GA is, for example, the tree map lets you pick a primary metric and a secondary metric. It's not super clear over here, but I'll show a small demo. You can pick two metrics, and the way it is visualized is the volume of boxes. Like for example, the primary metric over here is sessions, and the secondary metric over here is pages per session. The bigger the box implies the bigger the volume of sessions. And the greener the box, it figures out that the secondary metric is doing above average. The red metric over here shows that particular metric is below average. So in this case, let's say the direct channel is the second biggest box, which basically means in terms of sessions, it's doing really well. But if you look at it, it's a red color. So it basically also means that the secondary metric, which is pages per session, is not as good as what it's supposed to be. Another key thing that people might skip over here is the colors don't always mean the same, because each metric is different. Like pages per session means green is better because the larger value is better. But if you pick bounce rate, it's the other way around. You don't want bounce rate to be high. So basically at that point, the red is supposed to be better than green. So, but you don't have to worry about it. The moment you pick bounce rate over here, Google Analytics gives you a notification saying, oh, for this metric, the meaning changes, and also the legend over here on the top, high to low, that also changes. So I'm actually going to show a small demo of whatever I said. How do you get to those in AdWords, and how do you get to those in Analytics? Let me start with AdWords first. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Okay, I think it's okay. We have only 5 minutes? Oh, wow, okay. Okay, looks like I'm not doing well on time, but so what I'll do is I'll quickly go over things. So what you can do is in AdWords, you can go to the campaign report, AdWords, or keywords, go to columns, go to modify columns. There will be a section called Google Analytics. You can pick whatever metric that you want. In my case, I've already picked it. That's why it's shown over here. And then you save. You should be able to see, oops, sorry. It's not scrolling, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. So you should be able to see the percentage new sessions is higher. The bounce rate is also higher for this particular keyword. It kind of gives you additional insights. It's not just the AdWords metric, but you can also get into the GA-specific metrics at this point. And two other things is, how do you import goals and transactions into AdWords? So go to Tools, go to Conversions. I think I started at 4:30, right? I should be having 15 more minutes. Is that right? Okay, cool. So just go to Tools, Conversions, go to Google Analytics, pick the goal that you want to convert. Import. So in this case, let's imagine that you have two different goals, and then you start importing it. You pick the different criteria. Basically, it'll ask what is the value you want to pick. You can say pick the value that Google Analytics, whatever value you have set in Google Analytics, and it says what is the conversion window, which is basically how long do you want to track conversions after a click, let's say 30 days. And then the important thing is what kind of attribution model do you want to apply. It goes slightly into the MCF concept, which is, do you want to give 100% of the credit to the last click or 100% to the first click, or do you want to do a linear model or a time decay model? You can pick whatever is important for you. Let's in this case, I'm going to pick time decay, where the farther you are away from a conversion, I'm going to give a lesser amount of credit, and then you're going to import the goals. So this is one way for you to import the goals. Once you've imported, you can use it in AdWords for Conversion Optimizer. And for auto tagging, just go to your account settings. Go to Preferences, and then there will be something called as Tracking. You can enable auto tagging if you haven't enabled them already. So these are the key things that you need to know about working with GA metrics in AdWords. On the other hand, you can go to the GA side of it. You should be able to, let's say, go to Acquisition, All Traffic, Channels, go to Tree Map. This is a visualization I was talking about, where you picked primary metric as sessions and pages per session. The bigger the box says how many sessions you have, the red color says pages per session is not performing as well as you should. Similarly, go to AdWords. That also has tree map, but this tree map is broken down by the AdWords accounts rather than channels. And there is also segmentation that you can apply, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to get into the segmentation part of it right now. Okay. And then basically, let me switch in the interest of time to multi-channel funnels. So for example, in AdWords, you go to campaigns. What this basically says is this campaign ID, it says, okay, how many clicks do I have? How many conversions or transactions do I have? Which is basically saying 32 transactions or 32 conversions for this particular campaign ID, right? Which is great, but it's important for you to understand that by default, whatever you see here is the last click model. So in Google Analytics, by default, what it does is it gives 100% of the credit for your conversion to the last campaign that happened. But sometimes, as Rodrigo showed, it's not always a last click model. It's always, you should also think about assets. Like if you're like the soccer analogy was really good. It's not always about the forward who hits the goal, but people who pass to the forwards. You should give them credit as well. And the best place for you to figure that one out is basically move from GA to multi-channel funnels. So what you'll do is move into the conversions, multi-channel funnels, and there is an assisted conversion report. So in this case, I can pick all type, but just for completeness sake, I'm going to focus only on AdWords. I pick the type as AdWords. And you should be able to see, okay, these are the different campaigns I have, and how many assisted conversions did it generate. So if I remember, it was this campaign which showed us 32 conversions. So you might think, oh, this gave me only 32 conversions, but it's important for you to figure out that it was assisting you in so many other conversions. And someone else was getting 100% credit for the conversions, but this one was actually making a really good impact, assisting you towards that conversion. And it's not just this, you can also get into the top conversion paths. So this one is also pretty cool. What it basically does is it looks at the 30-day, it looks at the 30-day look back, which is anytime a conversion happens, it looks at the history for the last 30 days and figures out what are the different campaigns that you've touched before you converted. And once you have that, it basically shows a report that says this is a campaign path you followed, and for this path, how many conversions happened. And in this case, you're seeing unavailable. So to understand that better, let me pick another dimension that's source medium path, right? So I'm going to say AdWords campaign path, and then the second dimension is source medium path. So if you notice, the first touch point was Google CPC, which is a paid Google click, and this is a campaign name. The second touch point was Google Organic, and the Google Organic does not have an AdWords account because it's an organic search, and that's why it's basically showing up as unavailable. So it's important for you to look at different dimensions to make sense of things. And we also follow some privacy-based thresholding because there are some impression-based keys that we're not supposed to show for privacy's sake. So only if we have 10 users or more, 10 cookies or more, we'll show it. Otherwise, we'll show them as unknown or something like that. So I personally love multi-channel funnels because it gives you a complete story. It kind of stitches the user-centric analytics part into the analysis because it doesn't give you the single view of the last click. Because I didn't even get into the detailed parts of MCF, because if you can go into time lag, you can go to path length. The time lag is basically going to say how much time does it take between the first and the last touch point in a conversion, because in this case, it looks like 70.66% of conversions happens on the same day, which is a great thing. But there are also cases where 1,692 conversions where it takes about 12 to 30 days for you to complete a transaction from your first touch point. So these are interesting insights. And for lack of time, I'm not going to go into model comparison, but if you have time, just play around with it. What it basically does is you can change the different attribution models, time decay, you want to pick linear, first click, last click, and then you want to play around and figure out which ones are performing better as a first touch point, which ones are performing better as a last, which one are in the mid funnel, upper funnel, and the lower funnel of your conversion. So with that, let me stop there, and then And then I wanted to get into the, okay, I just want to summarize. So what I basically said is the first part is how do you create an audience so that you can act upon those audiences. The second part is how do you take actions on those audiences. And the final part is I wanted to get into the GA assistant demo, which is a cool thing if you want to log in. Instead of saying, like, whenever you want to think about a problem, you're not going to think in terms of reports, date ranges, keys, and metrics. You're going to ask in terms of natural language. So I wanted to show a demo. I probably won't have time. So I'll just show that you can go to Google, log into Google Analytics. You can click on this thing called Ask a Question. And then you can ask questions in plain English. It's like you say, what are my top selling products this week? It's going to say, underneath it's going to query and then show you the top 10 list or the top K list of top selling products this week. It's supposed to be faster than this, I don't know. But the main thing over here is Assistant is like a Q&A, like the way you used to search in Google. That way you can search in Google Analytics going forward, so you don't have to figure out which report to go and stuff like that. And I can assure you it's usually faster than this. I don't know what happened. Let's say I want to say top 10 performing keywords. And it'll basically show up that result, over here. And then you can also give feedback saying this was helpful or not helpful, which is very important. If you say it's not helpful, it helps Google's machine learning to learn better and give you better suggestions next time. So I think with that, I think I'll end my talk. I know that I went a little super fast. I'm sorry about that. I had to cover too many things. But I hope it was helpful. And I'll stick around after this session if you have questions. Yeah, thank you.
¿Alguna duda, alguna consulta? ¿Desean profundizar sobre algún aspecto? ¿No? Rodrigo, ahí.
Yes.
Hola. Solo para profundizar un poco en los modelos de atribución, un poco para que nos cuentes tu opinión sobre cuál debiera centrarse el análisis. Si quizás tienes alguno que sea preponderante por sobre otro.
So it's a hard question. Like, oh, sorry, I kept hearing things in Spanish. So it's a hard question, basically. Like I had the same question when I was looking at MCF and I was asking what is the best thing, right? And then I was brainstorming with the product managers, and what they basically said is it depends on your use case. Sometimes you do want to give credit to the first touch point because you feel like that's the one which drove your conversion, which kind of introduced you to the conversion. But there are sometimes, like in terms of budgeting, it's important to figure out the mid funnel and the lower funnel a lot better than the upper funnel. So it's a case-to-case basis, but what I would say is don't always rely on last click. So I know that I haven't answered your question of what is the best thing, but I can definitely tell that don't always 100% rely on the last click. Always look for other insights as well. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know if you wanted a better answer, but.
Gracias.